Welcome to the DNA Talks podcast, where we take on the mission of unlocking the code of your genetics. This season is all about you, upgrading your health, not just on the surface, but down to the root cause. Join us as your clinicians at the DNA company investigate your DNA and beyond. The intention of this podcast is to enhance your lifestyle by changing what is in your control. This does not substitute the medical advice given by a personal doctor, therapist, and other healthcare professionals.
Bonjour, mes amis. My name is Dr. Krista Kostroman, and I am the Chief Science Officer here at the DNA Company. And I have the privilege and pleasure of welcoming our guest today, Carolyn Allen, who is the mother, the founder, and the all things running of B Minerals. I'm going to allow her in a moment to introduce herself, but I'm personally, selfishly, very excited for our conversations here today because I think we get to touch on an element of nutrition, an element of health that can be really impactful to people in very subtle and elegant ways. And so I'm sincerely delighted and tantalized that we get to jump into such a conversation today. I love chatting with fellow scientists, really, who are enchanted by the mysteries of life and enchanted by how do we support wellness for others in very simple and elegant ways. And so allow me to welcome Carolyn. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Krista. I'm so excited for this conversation. You know, the DNA company has helped me so much via my own reading of my DNA. And I often tell people that there are two things that can help their health more than anything. And the first is taking minerals, and the second is having their DNA read by your company so that they can learn about how things are operating in their body and et cetera, et cetera. So this is a perfect conversation because minerals are so foundational and people don't know about them. And DNA is so foundational and people don't know that much about it as well. So what a perfect next.
And they dance so importantly together because I find often I'll offer consults to people and they're like, okay, great, DNA tells the whole story. And you're like, yes, but yes, it does. But if the core elements, if the Lego building blocks of the world aren't there, there's a giant but to that yes. And so I'm grateful that we get to explore one of the potential hindrances to the full and healthy expression of our DNA with you today. Yeah. So why don't we though take a step back, because I think how you came to be this queen of minerals and really someone who in the most beautiful of ways, jumped really deeply down that rabbit hole. I'd love to understand how you got to where you are today. How did you get to the point where you're sitting with us today and able to engage in such fun conversations?
I say I'm a mineral geek. Some people are like, don't say that. Say you're the mineral queen. I'm like, well, okay, but I am kind of geeky. So
welcome for guys.
Yes, exactly. So you and I are in the same room. Yeah. But my journey really started with my own health. First of all, had an autoimmune growing up. I was gluten intolerant, extremely gluten intolerant. I also had mold exposure as a young person, which created a whole raft of issues that I dealt with as a very young child. And then over my lifetime, and now I also learned about my DNA and how I don't detox well. My body doesn't detox well. So I was also extremely sensitive to all sorts of environmental toxins, et cetera. So all of these things led to a myriad of complex chronic health issues, including major gut dysbiosis, bloating. Even though I was in the corporate world and raising kids, being a super mom and being a leader in technology projects in the corporate world. And I burned out of that with really bad gut dysbiosis, bloating, elimination issues. I had really bad inflammation in my mouth with receding gums and bone loss in my teeth. I had recurring sinus infections that came every 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I'd have another one. It was that bad. I had flatlined adrenals for 2 years, actually over 2 years. And I worked with all these different practitioners trying to find ways to affect it. Then I was introduced to plant-based minerals. And they were really easy to take because they were liquid. And
Mhm.
I just started taking them. I'm like, okay. And my body said, yeah. I woke every morning and I was like, great, because I hate taking pills, but these tasted like water. It was easy. So I kept taking them. And after 2 months, I went to my dentist and I had my teeth cleaned, which was usually very painful. I had to have actually a Novocaine to clean my teeth. And they didn't have
Oh,
to do that.
wow.
They weren't sensitive. I had no bleeding. And my dentist looked in the mouth and she was like, what's happened? The tissue in your mouth is really
Mm.
healthy and pink.
Yeah.
There's no inflammation. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I couldn't even
Yeah.
think of it. I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's these minerals. And then
Mm.
2 months later, so 4 months in, I went to my naturopath and we did the adrenal test. And we were
Mhm.
looking at the results, and she was surprised because my adrenals were 1/3 of the way up the chart, where they had been
Mhm.
completely flatlined or below flatlined for years, literally years. And we'd had hardly any effect from anything that I'd done. She had wanted
Mm.
me to take hydrocortisone because it was that intense.
Mm. Oh,
So,
wow.
which I wasn't willing to do. So then,
Mhm.
I went through one season, another season, no sinus infections. I stopped having headaches. I mean, my gut, the elimination issues cleared. I stopped having bloating. And this is just so you're clear. I had been gluten-free for 8 years at this point and still had all the gut dysbiosis. So
Yeah.
I was left, and so over about 8 or 9 months, all these chronic symptoms just began to clear or cleared completely. And I was
Wow.
left with such an intense curiosity, like, how could this little cup of liquid make such a difference? And
Yeah.
I went down the rabbit hole, and I have this belief that there are no stupid questions. So I just kept
Mm.
asking them, and I
Mhm.
talked to scientists, cellular biologists, molecular biologists, even chemists and chemistry people. I mean, I really gave myself, many, many college level courses over 4
Mhm.
years, learning so that I wanted to get to the point where I could read scientific studies and understand what they were
Mhm.
speaking about in their jargon. So
Which
every
is a
time
different language. It's
it
an
is, and
accessibility issue.
yes, and every word that they, came up with, I mean, that I read, I didn't understand. I would research until I really understood, and I would keep talk to
Yeah.
people, say, explain how what is this, and then I'd realize, oh, you could
Mm.
just say it like this, you know. But to be a scientist, you have to have use that jargon, and I feel in a way
Mhm.
lucky, because I'm not a practitioner, I'm not a scientist.
Mhm.
I am just a very curious person, and my job, I feel, is to help bring my what I've learned to people in the language that just a
Yeah.
regular person off the street can understand. Because
Mm.
minerals is a very, very complex conversation. It
Mhm.
gets complex very quickly, as it does
Yeah.
with DNA. And
Yeah.
so learning, which your company has also done well, is learning how to help people understand what it is, the key points that they can actually utilize and take action on in their life. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do.
And I would offer that's to an extent the crux of healthcare, right? How do you translate this very complex knowledge set that we have into ways where the person can implement it in their life? Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so interesting. You just made me realize that this is the big shift, because it used to
Yeah.
be that you went to the doctor and the doctor was supposed to be smart and they used all their jargon to show how smart they were. And if you ask a question, they'd be like, oh, you don't need to know that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We'll just take this pill or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're just supposed to trust the doctor. And now it's completely different.
It a little bit reminds me of the history of reading to an extent, right? When Martin Luther on that door said, hey, we should allow all people ability to read and access to this religion that
Oh
you're
my
using
God.
to rule their lives. And it's such an interesting period in time because I think there's such an important, to your point, liberation of how people engage with medical science and how they have autonomy over their health. But in the
Yes.
same turn, this careful footing of that you still have to be so careful as to you engage with truly educated and well-intentioned practitioners.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's so true with minerals, because minerals are widely misunderstood. I call myself a mineral mythbuster.
Mm.
There is so much information about using minerals and taking minerals that
Yeah.
is not only ineffective, but potentially, you know, exacerbating people's situations in their body.
Yeah, and I want to humbly submit that I think our conversations over the past few months have shifted how I've engaged with minerals, because I think I fell victim to overdosing certain elements, or just hoping that, hey, if you get this singular mineral, good luck, have fun, because this is what we've studied. I think I became too reductionistic in that. And this is a simple example, like, if the person's having immune issues, hey, just toss some zinc and selenium and they're going to be fine.
Oh, it's
Everyone
really
needs this large dosing of magnesium, right? And again, it's
effective.
this humility within medical practice that the intention is always there. And sometimes we just have to catch up to the available research. And so I think even before we jump into conversations of epigenetics, where I'm a little bit salivating for, um, let's kind of talk about your approach and your philosophy to when it comes to offering minerals to the body, because I think there's some beauty in your approach. Before we jump into, let's talk about which minerals are important for epigenetics, and people perhaps then say, okay, well, I'm just going to take these ones singularly, as if it's those actors acting alone.
Yeah. In the research that I did, one of the huge aha moments that I had was
Mm,
that we have been taught to think about our body as parts. We have a heart, we have a liver, we have a kidney, we have a urinary tract system, and then we have, hormonal systems and lymph systems and adrenal,
yeah.
we have all these different parts. And when something goes wrong with one of those, we go to a practitioner, a heart doctor, we go to a kidney doctor, we go to it's on and on, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
If something's wrong with our skin, we go to a skin doctor, on and on. And then on top of that, we've been taught to treat our body kind of like a car. So
Hmm.
we've been told, we have these minimum daily allowances of vitamins and minerals, and then we try to fill up the tank every day, and that completely, it's like, and when we first were learning about the gut microbiome and we were learning about probiotics, people were like, oh, lactobacillus, just throw a whole bunch of lactobacillus in there. But now we understand that it's not, that's not the way to go about it, that this is a very complex natural system. I like to imagine the gut microbiome like a forest. Like when it's healthy, it's this beautiful lush place where everything grows, it's green, and now take a wheelbarrow full of magnesium and throw it in on the floor of that forest. What happens? The plants in that
Hmm.
area don't thrive. It's too
Hmm.
much in one place.
Hmm.
So the body works. It's a natural system. It was evolved from the earth. And when you think about minerals, this is the thing that happened for me as I was studying about minerals, and I kind of went from the outside in, and then you have
Hmm.
organs, you have tissues, and you have bones, muscles, bones, organs, and you start getting smaller and smaller. And then you realize that the whole body, the entire body is made of cells. A human body has between 37 and 150 trillion cells. And then inside of those cells, you have mitochondria, which are generating every single bit of energy in your body that's allowing us to talk, me to move my hands, our thinking, all of it. It's all driven by the mitochondria, the energy that the mitochondria generates, which requires two things to fuel it: amino acids and minerals. The body makes a lot of amino acids, but it makes no minerals. You have to ingest them. And the problem is that we're eating foods today that have way less nutritional content. And it's really simple to think about. Plants grow in the earth, and when they grow, the way that they create the structure of the plant is by sucking the minerals out of the soil. When you look around your room, you look at your body, all of the structure in the world is minerals. If you took all of the water out of your body, you'd be a little pile of minerals. This is how fundamental minerals are to everything. So, but now we're eating foods that are mineral depleted because we've been growing in the same soil, sucking the minerals out of that. Even in your backyard organic garden, that same thing occurs. And then we're drinking bottled and filtered water. And this is why we've had such an uptick in exacerbation of mineral depletion issues in terms of cognitive issues, brain fog, anxiety, depression. These are things people don't think of as signs of mineral depletion. But in my research, that's what I recognized. And it's really simple to think about it this way. If your mitochondria inside your cells cannot generate enough energy to do everything in your body, what does it do? It says, well, I'll just keep the heart pumping. I'll just keep the breath going. I'll just keep the blood flowing. And your skin, we don't care about that. Oh, a little brain fog. Okay. We'll slow you down. We'll make it so it's harder to get up off the couch, because we want you to
in protection.
In protection and just because there's not enough energy. So imagine if you can provide more minerals to your body in a format that your body can utilize. It's like taking a light and turning up the dimmer.
Yeah, I think you touch on something that clinically I'm still wrestling with, insofar as I like to sit on the side of the table where I do minimal supplementation, as little as possible, right? In part because we know that everything we take into our body needs to be filtered by kidneys and liver, and we don't fully understand the long-term impact of that yet, right? This said, we have to balance this with how we've been treating our planet and how our current farming practices are, and the fact that there are many studies out there. You can jump into the PubMeds of the world and other databases that speak very eloquently, if you've already summarized, to the fact that the food we are consuming now is less dense in nutrients compared to even the food 20, 40, 30, definitely 100 years ago. And so it's a very interesting position to be in, where on the whole, the world has more access to food, but also on the whole, the world has less access to nutrition. And so it's this very interesting space. Yeah.
There's actually a term for it called the hidden hunger.
Yeah.
So, all the hunger, they may be, in trying to support third world countries and giving them rice and, things like that, which have very, very little nutrition, you see.
Yeah. And they'll try and I think they're trying to get around that by fortifying it with one or two certain things, so that and so that you get this grain of rice that maybe has a lot of B12 or has a lot of this or that, but the complement of things, the symphony of things with which the body innately understands. And so speak to that a little bit, in the sense of educate our audiences. You have really inspired and educated me as to why, megadosing, a singular element, may not always be the most intelligent thing. There always might be a place, right? Let's allow for, this is where your practitioner offers intelligence, of maybe there's a place towards megadosing for a period of time.
Correct.
But in general, can you offer kind of the education, the insight as to why, on the whole, megadosing is maybe not the smartest thing for people?
Yes. Well, and kind of the simplest version of that for me is the image of the forest, and putting a big pile of magnesium in the middle of your forest, and yes, it'll put you to sleep, but it's a Band-Aid. And what you're doing every day when you're using megadosed minerals is you're creating imbalance in the body. Now, minerals are so fundamental to every operation, every biosynthesis process, every tissue development, every protein development. Inside that mitochondria, the mitochondria goes through something called the Krebs cycle. And at every stage, of which there are many, what is needed is an amino acid and a mineral. And it's not just like the 5, electrolytes, what we call the macro minerals that people take: magnesium, potassium, calcium, etc. It's a whole complex set of minerals, like things you wouldn't necessarily take a pill for, like molybdenum or phosphorus or copper. Many of us are taking zinc, and some people are using electrolytes or magnesium supplements and things like that. But minerals work in balanced pairs and triumvirates. And A really good example of this is cramping. So somebody has a leg cramp, they're like, oh, I need magnesium. And they spray their magnesium spray, or they say they take more magnesium. But cramping can happen because of an imbalance between potassium and magnesium. So let's say you don't know whether you're low in magnesium or not, but you take more magnesium thinking it's going to help your cramping, and it exacerbates the ratio, the distance of the ratio.
Yeah.
So now you have even more magnesium and less, and also and cramping can be from a phosphorus. Phosphorus depletion is a big factor in cramping. So what I'm trying to help people understand is you cannot hack your body with minerals. I'm telling you, it is so complex. I'm here to tell you, you cannot find any way to be smarter than your body, because your body is magically, mysteriously wise. So what you need to do instead is you need to find a way to get minerals into your body in very trace small amounts that are ready for the body to go, oh, I need that over here. Oh, I need this over here. Oh, I need this over here. I need this in my brain. I need this in my calf. I need this in my gut. I need this in my everywhere in your entire body. The beautiful thing, and this is why, in learning, I was like, how could this little cup of plant-based minerals liquid have such an effect? And the interesting thing is that it's doing just that. And the beautiful thing is, if you think of yourself as a set of cells, that a set of systems of cells that evolved from the earth, and we think about single cell organisms and then multi-cell organisms back when the earth was just millions and millennia ago. There had to be, because the way the whole thing was designed was this mitochondria inside the cell needed these minerals. So there had to be natural tools to get minerals into the cell. And that is plant-based minerals. So literally, it's part of the whole design of supporting cellular systems. These they're called fulvic and humic. These molecules are, and still are, the tools that support nutritional uptake into the cells, intercellular detoxification, and full system detoxification, which ultimately is the key to epigenetics.
It's a beautiful transition point, because that's where I was hoping we could twist, right? Because you made this statement of the body will just kind of say like, oh, I need you and I need you. And when we boil it back to this very elegant offering where you said that the body is smarter than you insofar as, and so much of the core of our intelligence that is transmitted, the body's learning that has transmitted over the time since people have existed, is through DNA and through the things with which denote its expression, right? Do you think we have this beautiful sheet music, and then atop it, epigenetics are kind of the notations of here's how you play. And in order to make those notations, this is where, in part, minerals will come in. They support not only the notation of it, but the expression there within. Minerals are an incredible point within our symphony and needed within our symphony. Yeah,
that is so. I love that, because that's just how I like to. It's just how I think of it.
Yeah. Music is my drug of choice. So most of my analogies will boil back to music, if anyone will allow, and the indulgence.
And so to me, the minerals are like the instruments in the symphony. That's what they are. They are the instruments in the symphony. Truly, I mean, when you study minerals and you keep going down smaller and smaller, you end up with vibration, which is music. So
Oh, girl, we'll have to do an esoteric podcast together one day. I would love to jump down to that level where we can talk about people effectively being music expressed.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but back onto minerals. Let's meditate. I think, I asked you, I think, to explain why we need to think about minerals as a complement, as something that you must offer in totality as opposed to single off. This said, why don't we jump into a few instances where we know single actor minerals and how they support various elements, especially of epigenetics, right? Because again, this is when I say the yes, but of yes, your DNA is everything, but here's the supporting actors. Is there, maybe you can start us off with zinc. Do you want to talk a little bit about zinc
Yeah,
and how
well,
that?
what I say, so one of the things I want people to be clear about is every single biosynthesis process in the body is supported by minerals. As an example, and I'm going to step away. I mean, we're going to get there. And ultimately, those biosynthesis processes are, in some ways, defined by your genetics and your epigenetics. I'll use
Absolutely.
myself as an example, because my methylation, the way that my body works with methylation, which is associated, and we can have you explain more in detail about that, just to give the definition for people, is it's not effective. And so here all my life I've been so sensitive to, incredibly sensitive to any kind of environmental thing, whether it's cigarette smoke or a perfume or anything, and quite allergic to lots of things, lots of skin problems, all sorts of things. But since I started taking minerals, it has greatly reduced, not completely gone, but greatly reduced. So,
Of course.
so even though my body itself, the DNA, the way I'm built, is structured in such a way that I'm not a very effective detoxer, providing, as an example, humic to my system is an incredible
Yeah.
support to at least, where I'm weak, give
Yeah.
the strength. So
Yeah.
let's let you go.
Well, where the analogy I think I offered towards those, especially the more, and I say this with love because I would count myself amongst this, the delicate flowers of the world, right? The people that can walk into a room and say like, "Oh, I am the canary, and I'm here to tell you that." I'm amongst those. The analogy I like to offer is very much every person will, their genes to an extent define the size of not only their kitchen sink, but the drain of the kitchen sink. And so some people will have really large kitchen sinks that you can toss a bunch of dirty dishes in and you're going to be okay because it's just large enough to hold that. Whereas others, the delicate flowers of the world, not only have a smaller sink, so we can hold less of those dirty dishes, but sometimes we have to think about the drain as well. How large is that drain? Can accommodate the flow? Can it accommodate, little bits of food getting down there? Right. And so I think to a lot of our nutrition and lifestyle, right? It's the rate with which we're exposed to dirty dishes and we collect them, the rate at which we clean them, and more importantly, like that drain, right? Do you have the soap to go about doing these things? And so, I haven't thought so far as into this analogy of what are minerals, right? But they probably support several different things, right? They are amongst the energy that cleans the dishes, the soap that supports the dishes. They fit into so many different parts. And I think that's a really important element to think of, because I think there's a tendency with human health. We want to reduce it. We want to make it very simple. If this, then that. And minerals don't necessarily fit into that category because they touch on and they support so many different things within the body, even the more trace minerals like I can't say this one, but molybdenum, whatever, however you say that.
Molybdenum.
That one.
I know, it's one of those ones you're like, how do I say that? You never hear it said.
No, you do not. You do not. And then there's people like myself that don't even endeavor to.
So one of the things that I've thought about it since I met with one of your coaches, Lara Varden, Dr. Lara Varden, who's recommend
Phenomenal.
her to anyone.
Absolutely.
Is that, so she talked to me about how because of the methylation struggle that my body has relative to my DNA. And she talked about how zinc operates in my body. So, in my body, and you'll know more about this, it could talk into it, but in my body, if I just take a single pill of zinc every day, it's not really going to be very effective because the transport of zinc around my body doesn't work very well. That's the issue. So, but when you think about shifting from taking a pill of zinc to using plant-based minerals, and particularly the B minerals, which are absorbing directly through any tissue that they touch, as opposed to having to be dissolved in the gut, digested in the gut, and absorbed through the gut lining. These absorb through any tissue. So one of the main reasons that I started getting so much healthier and my immune system went, like this, and I didn't start, I mean, I'm not, but literally the only illness that I've had in really 9 years is COVID. Because, and I really feel it's my immune system is so well infused with the necessary elements to fight viruses and bacteria, et cetera, that I'm not prone to getting these things.
And I would even extend it beyond just the immune system, because I think it's, again, and I don't mean to backtalk you, like I think it's reductionistic to think it's just the immune, right? When we think about consequences of minerals when it comes to mental health, to capacity to move and to be fit, right? All of this will then feed back positively to our capacity to have good immune, right? We know that people who endure and struggle with depression, right? They innately will have a reduced immune system. It's kind of a chicken and egg. So yes, I would offer definitely your biome and your capacity to absorb is altered, but then that feeds up to other systems, which then positively feed back. And there's the mystery and the magic. Yeah.
And Krista, I know you guys just launched your DNA aging piece. Yeah. And, so I'm really interested. I think it would be an interesting thing to talk about longevity, because one of the things is here, I started studying about minerals 10 years ago or actually a little more. And I look younger and feel younger today than I did then. So, the relationship between providing these minerals, being able to take the dimmer on my light and turn it up so that, and I think of it, there's so many facets of this. So think about, people think about food cravings as an example. They're like, oh, I eat pretty well, but then I like have to have that bag of chips, or I'm like, I crave sugar in the afternoon, or, I'm opening the fridge at night going, oh, is there something that can fill that kind of things missing void? And what I want people to just ask the question, could this be my cells saying we need minerals? Because we hear it again and again, and it's certainly been my experience that giving my body all the minerals that it needs in this very bioavailable form has had me make different choices. Like literally, we've heard story after story, and a woman who every single night she had ice cream, a small bowl of ice cream every single night. It was like her thing. And suddenly she realized one day she wasn't having it anymore. She hadn't gone to the freezer to make her bowl of ice cream. Another woman, she called up my business partner and an old friend of hers, and she said, I've had a sugar craving all my life. And because she had some trauma growing up, it was her soothing thing. And she realized, she was at a party recently and somebody handed over the cake, and instead of taking it, she passed it on, and
instinctively, as opposed to through shaming judgment of I must not.
Exactly. She was like, whoa, she noticed, she's like, I'm passing the cake on, like, I don't want it. Another woman said, she had never exercised in her life. And she started taking our minerals, and she thought one day, I think I'd like to go for a walk. She went for a walk,
Mm.
And then, the summer went on and she started taking walks every day. And then she
Mhm.
started taking
Mhm.
walks and the winter came and she thought, I'm going to go to the gym and walk on the treadmill.
Mhm.
First
Mhm.
time in her
Mhm.
life ever, she actually went to the gym, and
Mhm.
started
Yeah.
walking. Another
Yeah.
another woman, she had a major trauma growing up and she slept as an adult with the lights on in her house. And she one day woke up and she realized she'd been turning the lights off in the house for about a week when she went to
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
So think
Yeah.
about what
Yeah.
happens. I think about this, the way the epigenetics can begin to show up and
Yeah. And I think you touched on an interesting thing as you began to offer examples is this: there's a current belief within people that aging is inevitable and that as one gets older, health must decline, that they
yes,
must lose cognitive function, they must lose physical capacity, right? And I mean, it's I don't want to put it out there. This is like, oh, we'll live forever if we correct with minerals. But I think that mentality is almost more entrapping than the actual mechanisms within the body that eventually will, age and come to a close. And we see this often within our DNA aging testing, right? So for the audience, just kind of to offer awareness of what it is. Right now we have this testing offering. It's called DNA Aging, and what it does is it looks at methylation patterns atop DNA. So right now, we our core product, the 360, the reading of genes and the interpretation thereof, right? So, Carolyn worked with Dr. Lara and she was able to understand her genome and the scripting within the body. It's a very different question to ask: what genes and how are genes being expressed, right? Remember, we talked about the music sheet and the notation above. The notation above on this music sheet might say, this note's kind of funky, don't play it, right? Just like with methylation, it can kind of come atop DNA and say, hey, this gene's kind of funky for whatever reason, don't even express it. And that may not be a great thing, right? Maybe that's a gene that says, hey, let's build our muscle, let's do this, let's do that, let's detox this, let's do that. And so if you have certain mutations on that, on your sheet music, on your DNA, right, you're not going to be expressing certain things. And so we do not currently have the science to understand, is this gene, is this SNP silenced? But we do have beautiful capacity to look into patterns. And a lot of this is, again, the advancement of technology. We're able to do large scale pattern recognition. Technology can, that the human eye may not necessarily catch, and say, oh, within this portion of your DNA, we're able to see that you are aging more quickly or less quickly than your calendar age, right? So I think, your calendar age, the time with which you've been on the planet, unfortunately, until we have time machines, that's not going to change. But one day, I hope to be a cyborg one day that goes back in
oh,
time.
okay. Oh,
It's a goal.
well,
It's a
you and
goal.
I talk sci-fi now.
Oh, yes, we can. Anything that involves geeky glasses, I'm here for.
Yes.
But so you can't change your calendar, your chronological age, but something you can, and it sounds like, Carolyn, it would have been interesting if we could have done methylation testing for you. What you can change and you have power and autonomy over is your biologic age. Right. So the biologic age in juxtaposition to chronologic really is saying, how long has your body thought it's been around? How is its health doing? And I think age is a really tricky concept because, again, we have this linear perception of it, but the body can really say, hey, we have been able to keep ourselves clean. We've been able to keep ourselves nourished. We've been able to express properly atop this DNA. We don't have gunk sitting atop the DNA that is silencing it, right? We're able to express ourselves in its fullest. And in that full expression, the body, independent of your calendar chronologic age, can say, hey, I feel pretty young. I feel pretty great. And it sounds like, Carolyn, for you, and again, we don't have this testing to validate, but I value the qualitative that you're offering, as I'm sure you probably have some quantitative as well. You're offering that through supporting body, through supporting with that nutrition, enabling those processes within the body was like, cool, I can clean up and I can actually go back to a point where, because of my cleanliness, because of my capacity to express fully, I feel markedly younger than whatever the calendar says I should be feeling.
Yes, and there are so many pieces to it when you think about oxidative stress in the body, caused by
Yeah.
free radicals, senescent cells, things like that. And then you realize that the body actually has natural ways of clearing those.
Yeah.
And then you provide
Of
these
course.
humic and fulvic substances that greatly enhance it. So, the body, as you well know, it's a homeostasis, so a balance creating machine. It is working all the time.
Yeah.
It has a myriad of processes for cleaning, even clearing out your brain, on, and it has so many processes, and every single one of them requires minerals. So
Yeah.
when and I really want people to think about longevity in particular, it is definitely a fact that as you get older, your mitochondrial function is affected. Okay, so a 50-year-old person has way less mitochondrial function than does a 10-year-old. Okay. However, if you think of that 10-year-old who's extremely mineral deficient and a 50-year-old who's providing full spectrum minerals to their body all the time, this 50-year-old could be
Yeah.
operating at like 80% mitochondrial
Mhm.
function, and the 10-year-old could be operating at 40. Do you
Yeah.
see? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
biggest thing that you can do for your epigenetics, for your methylation pathways, for your overall health is on a foundational level is to provide full spectrum minerals, because it's going to support every single aspect of your body.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Coupled with the sleep, coupled with stress reduction, coupled with movement, coupled with. But I appreciate from things that you take within, it is amongst the top recommendations of things that people in general can be doing to support,
Well, and
alongside all that
what I
juice.
mean about that is, like, if you think about the nervous system, and
Mhm.
one of the things I like to talk about is how a cell that is hangry, doesn't have what it needs,
Mhm.
is affecting
No.
your entire nervous system, because your entire nervous system is, it's actually it's fueled by minerals. If you took the minerals out of your body, your
Mhm.
nervous system would have there would be no electrical
Yeah.
charge, so
Yeah.
so it actually helps the entire nervous system calm, which does
Mm.
support sleep. Again, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
of course, getting sleep, learning how to sleep if you're struggling with sleep,
Mhm.
all of those pieces.
Mhm. Yeah.
All it's a yes and. I sat
Yeah.
on a longevity panel last year, and with each expert kind of in their different expertise, their area. And
Mhm.
at the end of the panel, everybody would be like, yes, this thing, you need to do this if you're going to experience
Mhm.
great longevity and quality of life, and you need the minerals. And everyone
Mm.
was like, and the minerals and the minerals.
Yeah.
So what I'm wanting to say is that if you have the minerals, all the
Yeah.
other things that you do are going to be more effective.
One of the more beautiful things that I have when I work with DNA with people is um, an alleviation of shame to a certain extent. So, for example, my private practice, I work a lot in mental health, and there's incredible shame to a certain extent of, why am I so sad? My life is so good. Or there's a shame and I'm always anxious and I can't be grateful. Or there's a shame and why am I so crazy? Insert whatever shame tactics they have. And one of the more beautiful, powerful things when it comes to DNA is there can be a normalization, in the sense of, well, this is naturally how your body functions. And now we know that we can support it better. And I love to hear that offering minerals to the body can take away some shame. So, for example, a lot of people, I think traditionally women, but I'm starting to see it crop up in men a lot more as well. There's a lot of shame around food that they intake.
Exactly.
I lack willpower. I am a bad person. I am there's this inextricable sense that, their willpower, diet, body shape are all connected. right? And when I started practicing, and when I still do, I'll ask people like, what are you craving? And I'm not asking this to shame you. I'm asking this in curiosity of what your body is lacking, right? The infamous example is chocolate, right? Magnesium, right? If you're a person who craves chocolate, chances are you're missing some of that magnesium. And so I'm grateful that, you're offering a person reaching for. There is an element of habit, but one of the ways you can liberate yourself easily from this, because health should not be a battle necessarily, but one of the ways you can easily liberate yourself from these habits that you feel entrapped in shame by, are offering better nutrition to body so that body can express its DNA and express its health in a more wholesome way.
Exactly. I have a personal story of this.
Mm.
One of the things that I learned, so I've always been an extremely sensitive person, not just to environmental toxins that we talked about, but also to sounds, repetitive sounds, light,
Mm.
touch.
Mm.
I can't sleep under sheets that aren't cotton, that like any polyester.
Mm.
It literally feels like my skin is burning. And I grew up
Yeah.
in a family that was not very supportive of my sensitivities, and I
Mhm.
was the problem. I was the problem child for sure. And
Mm.
I spent my life trying to fix this in me. You
Yeah.
see, there's something wrong with me that,
Mm.
you see, and what it was so freeing to me to go,
Mm.
oh my gosh, this is just the way I am.
Mhm.
Now it's completely shifted the shame that I have around
Yeah.
that. It still makes me wish I wasn't. It would be
Of
nice not to
course.
be so sensitive. But
Of course.
now, but I recognize that I am.
Mhm.
And now I look for places that I can go to relieve it, and now I'm looking
Mm.
for ways to support myself with it rather than
Mhm.
thinking that there's something wrong and I should fix it, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
that another story kind of more even specifically relative to what you're talking about is, I've always been actually very healthy, and I've never been a sugar craver, but I
Mhm.
like craving like candy and things like that. But I ate a lot of fruit, and I mean, I'd sit
Mm.
down and eat a pound of grapes, in 10 minutes, and
Sure.
that's a
Sure.
lot of sugar actually, and it's so interesting now because I'll buy some grapes maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
I even don't even buy them anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
I might eat a small amount and then they'll last for a week.
Yeah.
And I just notice that. You see, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to change that.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
notice it. And
Yeah.
this is a possibility that I think if you can learn about how your body works using something like
Yes.
the DNA company um, process, and then provide these minerals to your body, you might be able to not have
Yeah.
to discipline yourself or shame yourself or turn over a new leaf, or you might
Yeah.
actually just learn how your body works and then support it really well so that you can
Mhm.
have, so that you can get younger.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
I am.
I think, yeah. Oh, of course. Of course. And I think there's, as someone that has grown up and gotten younger, not necessarily in the physical sense, just more in my mentality and the way I approach life, it's been absolutely delightful, and it's a little bit of a surprise, right? It's a delightful surprise, because I think as you begin to shift things, right, you're not necessarily looking for certain outcomes, and then all of a sudden they percolate. Yeah, and there's, I think, as we've redesigned our programs, our clinical care programs at the DNA company, and the philosophy with which we're bringing into that, um, very much sits in a space of compassion, and in a space of any habits, any shameful things that you think you have, right? They're simply just telling us, they're giving us a heads up. Your body's trying to compensate for something that isn't working.
Yeah.
And once we understand that, we can then better support alongside it, with nutrition, accessible nutrition, right?
Yes.
With our awareness of your DNA. And then that can be gently just released. as opposed to something that you're working to mitigate and band-aid and suppress and kind of fight, which I think is a paradigm very much within medicine. Let's fight, right? Here's a pharmaceutical to suppress it so we don't have to deal with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah,
and so that, a totally different way to look at your body would be to provide, and I want to talk a little bit about beam minerals, and not even because I want to, push our brand, but because they offer an opportunity for people. And, one of the things, a lot of people have what I call that supplement graveyard at home. It's the cabinet filled with
I haven't
pills.
heard that phrase, but I love it. It's true.
Yeah, right? It's the cabinet filled with pills that you don't take anymore. And a lot of them are minerals, things that, someone said I should take this. I took it for a while. I didn't notice a difference.
Yeah.
And I'm actually telling you, you didn't feel a difference because it didn't make a difference. When you take, I want people to understand when they take a pill or powder, or a flavored drink, like an electrolyte drink, your body has to digest it. You actually only about 10 or 12% of it ever even gets broken down to the point where it can be absorbed through your gut lining. And it has to be absorbed through your gut lining. Okay.
Yeah.
So now that also relies on the health of your gut lining. And so many people have some level of gut dysbiosis or, SIBO, IBS, all those kinds of things that are affecting the absorption engine of their body. But let's say that, let's say 10% gets into your bloodstream. Well, that's very nice, but the problem is that most minerals don't do their job at all in your bloodstream. They have to get inside the cells, which is called assimilation. And the problem is that most of us don't have very effective assimilation engines for two reasons. One, the bad fats that we eat clog the lining of the cell. So literally fewer channels open. And then second of all, we're all relying on something called passive diffusion, which is just this, liquid going, a channel opens, there has to be a particular receptor, and then something goes through the cell lining. So they say only 5 to 7% of something that you take in pill, powder, or flavored drink form gets ever into the cell. Now imagine a completely different thing. And now that's only, let's say it's just zinc. Now you've gotten zinc, 5% of that zinc in there. Now there's all the other ones that you still need to figure out how to get in there. But so now imagine this natural solution, and imagine a liquid that you can drink that has the full spectrum of minerals. And imagine that it's a liquid that requires no digestion. It's already dissolved down to the component level, ready for absorption. And the molecule size is so small that it can absorb through any tissue that it touches. So it can absorb through the lining of your mouth, your throat, your esophagus. By the time it hits your stomach and hasn't even gotten into your digestive tract, it's in your stomach, it's already been absorbed and assimilated, and some portion of it is being utilized by your body. But even more so than that, so now let's say it's absorbed into your bloodstream. Now the beautiful thing about this, there's something called the fulvic in plant-based minerals, and it's a flavonoid. And a flavonoid, the way I like to describe it, Krista, is imagine you're in your room and there's a guy out in the hall and he has a big backpack and he's filling it with all of the good stuff you need today. And he comes in through the door opens, he comes in through the door and he dumps it all out on your desk there. Now you have all of everything you need for the day. And it's right there at 1 o'clock, you at 2 o'clock, you're like that, at 4 o'clock, everything's there you need. But that's not where he stops. He's like, is there any garbage around? Let's empty this. Anything else that needs to go out, let's put it in the backpack, and he carries it out. So this is the way the fulvic works, into the cell, bringing nutrients in and taking biowaste and toxins out extremely effectively. 60 times, he can carry 60 times his weight in, 60 times his weight out. And the kinds of things that he carries out are heavy metals, biowaste, just
the things that disrupt.
Yes, all of those things that disrupt cellular operations and create oxidative.
And effectively age.
and effectively age. Yes, because in your cells is in your tissues, you know.
Mhm.
So takes those things out of the cell, and then he dumps his backpack out in your bloodstream. And then he has a partner, and the partner is called the humic molecule. And the humic
Mhm.
molecule is like this huge Velcro ball. It's very large relative to a cell. So, like
Mhm.
Velcro, it's very sticky on the outside, has a huge number of receptor sites. And basically, all that stuff that he dumped out into your bloodstream sticks to that Velcro ball. At a
Mhm.
certain point, that Velcro ball gets so heavy at a molecular weight, it falls out of solution and it leaves through all of the elimination channels in your body, which is really
Mhm.
key, especially for people who struggle with methylation and elimination pathways, because
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
humic molecule will leave through every elimination channel and anyone that's available. So, as
Mhm.
an example, people who sometimes they'll start taking our minerals and they'll say, my sweat is really stinky or my tears are
Mhm.
really itchy. And that's because
Mhm.
those are elimination pathways.
Mhm.
So if it can't use your liver, your kidney, your bladder, et
Mhm.
cetera, your feces, it will use other pathways. You're rubbing your hands together, the bottoms of your
Yeah.
feet, your sweat, your snot, your tears,
Yeah.
your.
Yeah. So you almost use a stinky person as a clinical sign it's working.
Exactly. So well, I'd love to. What I really wanted to do is ask them to send a swab of their sweat so I could test it. It wouldn't have been interesting. It would be,
That would have been quite fascinating. That would have
yeah,
been quite
that's
fascinating. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I dreamed of. So, and the thing is, think about cellular systems that evolved on Earth. There had to be natural ways to both bring minerals into the
Mhm.
cells because that was very important for the thriving of cellular cells and cellular
Mhm.
systems.
Yeah.
And then it had to have a natural way of
Mhm.
detoxifying from inside the cells and full
Yeah.
cellular systems. And that's what the humic and fulvic
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. So the conduit, not only to, I think, again, people, when we think of environmental burden and all the growth that we deal with in the world, right? So this is a mechanism to keep that out, but more importantly, to kind of round a little bit back to epigenetics, to the DNA, right? The dirtier your cell is, the more that's going to impact your DNA, either directly insofar as heavy metals will disrupt various ways it's being transcribed or methylated, or more indirectly in the oxidative damage is then going
Yeah.
to shift some of your genes and therefore push you more towards that older biologic age, independent of where you sit on the chronological age, right? We know that people within dirty environments that don't have access to things that support the cleaning of body, their biologic age will be markedly greater than their chronologic age. And so
Right.
this is one of the ways, and I think it's quite a beautiful way too, because whenever I work with clients, I'm always mindful before I'll put them on any supplement regime. Before I offer any supplements, I check in with the gut and figure out where's the gut at, right? And so sometimes that means the person needs to be going for IVs because we must bypass the gut.
Right.
And it's neat to know for people out there that there are other oral ways that are not requiring of IV that can support body in times of need, especially when the gut isn't great and you're in this little bit of a precarious situation of how do you nourish when body is not able to accept that nourishment.
Yes. What an amazing conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's been absolutely delightful, and I hope that you get to come back at some point in time. We won't subject our audiences to a sci-fi conversation, but I think, given your, well, maybe we will, we can do one of those outtakes. Carolyn and Krista go sci-fi. I think it'd be interesting. I'd love to get you back at some point in time where we can discuss longevity and minerals a little bit more in depth. I think this was a beautiful introduction and kind of a beautiful conversation around reduction of shame within clinical care and different ways that you can support not only exploring your own health, but very gently and easefully introducing health. Because I think, again, the idea that it must be a struggle and a battle and a war and kind of all those very
Exactly.
aggressive analogies aren't fair, especially when you can take something like the humic and fumic and very gently and naturally, and maybe a little bit stinky, support your health.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
Mother Nature provided what you need.
Yeah.
Humic
Yeah.
and fulvic.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've, again, it's the intelligence of the body. It's the intelligence of our DNA, right? As the body was aware of, oh, hey, I have access to this, and this is great for that, right? There's this co-evolution, and the story of our DNA, the story keepers, which is our DNA, understand the stories of our four parents, our forefathers, our foremothers, in ways that we simple humans have yet to fully appreciate and realize. So
Yes.
thank you for jumping into this, and thank you for the exploration of this, Carolyn.
Thank you so
Delightful
much.
to chat with you.
It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you today.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mezumi, I think that is our time for today. Thank you so very much for joining us and listening to us. I think we will have Carolyn back at some time in the future. And if you have any thoughts as to what you'd love for her to explore, it would be absolutely delightful if you could share that with us. We want to make sure that these podcasts are of use, information, utility to you. As selfishly, as happily as I would love just to sit and chat with Carolyn for hours, we want to make sure it is in service of you and your health. So if you have any thoughts, suggestions, comments, what you'd like to see her back for, please do not hesitate to reach out. And we take feedback, as I'm sure Carolyn does, very, very seriously, and we aim to be of service to you and your health. So let us know. And until next time, I think we are at the point where I say au revoir. Oui? Au revoir.